Hold on, I didn't go live yet. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay,
I'm just looking for the
we're
notification.
live.
Okay, here we go. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to Sunday Stories. I'm your host, Naeemah Khabir. Today is Sunday, October 31st, 2021, or the 25th of Rabiul Awal, year 1443. Again, welcome back to Sunday Stories. Today we have a live session. The last one was pre-recorded, but this week we have a live session where we will be discussing studying Islam overseas. We have 2 BAMBAR members. We have Sakina Abdul Hakim, who will be joining us briefly. She'll be joining us briefly, and we will also have Rasheedah Sharif. You all know her as Aneesah Rasheed in the group. So I just wanted to give you assalamu alaikum, everybody. Sakina, if you are watching this in the group, we see you trying to get into the Zoom. Mutara is working with it, so just keep trying to come in. But in the meantime, we are going to start with Rasheedah. So do you prefer for me to just call you Rasheedah or Aneesah?
Rasheedah. Rasheedah is my name. Okay. Aneesah is my middle name.
Okay.
I don't like people from my job or former jobs to try to look me up. So,
I understand. I totally understand. So Rasheedah, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that your family is from Baltimore, but can you give us just, just a brief intro about how your family came to accept Islam and what your experience was like growing up in the Muslim community in Baltimore?
Okay, well, my parents came to Islam 2 different ways. My father, he was a Panther. And from there, he joined the Nation of Islam. And then he, of course, came with the transition, him and my mother became Muslim with Wafdi Muhammad. My mother, she was invited to Islam by, funnily enough, one of my father's friends who wanted to marry her or her on my aunt. So his I guess, in his mind, he said he was going to marry one of the Cubs girls. Whichever one not answered the door when he tried to sell my grandfather papers and a bean pie, he was inviting to the masjid. And so that's how my mother became Muslim. He did not end up marrying her at all. She came to the masjid, became friends with people, saw my father, and he was married at the time. And then when he got divorced, him and my mother got married later on down the line. So, my mom was a singer. And so when she became Muslim, she had like a singing group full of Muslims. So then they both, transitioned in 77 when Wafdi Muhammad kind of, switched, basically dissolved the Nation of Islam and brought everybody over to Sunni Islam. So that's how my parents became Muslim. 2 separate paths, but came together. Growing up, I will say, growing up at my masjid, I went to what was then, it started off as Temple number 6. In Baltimore and changed to the Baltimore Masjid. From the Baltimore Masjid, it changed to Masjid al-Haq, which is what people know it as today on Wilson Street or Islamic Way in Baltimore City. So that's the masjid that I grew up in. I will say growing up in my masjid was amazing. Growing up there, it felt like family. And everybody still feels like family when you run into them on the street or when you see them outside of the masjid, or even when you go to different masjids, because of course many masjids split out of my masjid and became new masjids in Baltimore City. So growing up in Baltimore at Masjid al-Haq it was fun. You know, we would beg our parents to go to the masjid. We
Really?
yeah, we begged, like our punishment growing up was we couldn't go to the masjid. we would meet up after school at the masjid. We would be at the masjid, like after school we would go to the masjid. The weekends we would be at the masjid. My father had karate class. He was a karate teacher, so he taught many of the Muslim boys and some of the girls at the masjid, but a lot of the boys, because he had a boys class inside the masjid. But yeah, it was an experience that I don't think not many have had growing up. I think our friends, because a lot of in Baltimore City, back in the 60s and in the 60s, 50s, and all this, there were not many Black schools. So a lot of our parents knew each other. A lot of our parents grew up together. A lot of our parents, knew each other. And so when they became Muslim, they already had a bond. So even, my father and my mother went to the same high school, so it's like a lot of them had a bond. A lot of them had friendships and kinships and, had already had family members intermarry outside of Islam. So with them coming into Islam and all being from the same areas, whether it be East Baltimore or West Baltimore, they were already close, and it was a very tight-knit family community. Then that changed. But alhamdulillah, most of us are still very close and still kind of feel like each other are we are all each other's family outside of that. So that was my experience growing up. Like it was nice. I look back and have amazing memories of my childhood at the masjid.
Oh, alhamdulillah. Now you are no longer in Baltimore. You are further down south now, right?
Actually, no. I'm back in Baltimore.
Okay.
I was living in Charlotte for 10 years. I lived in Miami, and then I moved to Charlotte. So a good 18 years I would say a good 15 years I wasn't living in Baltimore. I've been in Baltimore for the past going on like 3 years now. I've been in Baltimore. So yeah, I am back.
Okay. So I just got a message from Sakina. She said that her internet, she's in Nigeria, y'all. Her internet is kind of going in and out. So inshallah, just wanted to give you all a heads up. We might have to do a part 2 with the Sakina, but we're going to keep trying to get her to get in the Zoom room. So I wanted to ask you this. Let me tell you how this first started off. Last spring, I was thinking of topics for this season 2 of Sunday Stories. And I was like, I got to talk to some of the people in the group who are under Imam Wardi Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him and forgive his sins, about their experiences studying in Syria. And I remember I reached out to you and you said, well, I didn't go under that cohort. I had actually preceded them. And, so I was like, oh, okay. So then you start, like, you was giving me like, all the info and about how you was the first sister to get a scholarship to LS. So I was like, hold on, we got a trailblazer in our group. So I had to switch it. I was like, okay, well, let me just focus on, sisters, studying overseas. So I wanted to ask you first and foremost, where did the idea come from? Well, where did you study, first of all? Because I know you studied in more than one country.
Well, I studied at Jamia Abu Noor in Syria, in Damascus. And I studied at Jamiatul Azhar in Cairo. So those are the 2 places that I've studied. But yes, I was actually out for Syria. I got the idea from, I always wanted to travel. My father traveled a lot. My parents traveled a lot all throughout my childhood. So I always wanted to travel. So one of the imams, Imam Bashar from Syria, I'm not sure. Some people know him, some people don't. he actually came to my father and he said, you know, this will be the first year that they're allowing international girls to come to the school. For centuries, boys have gone from all over the world. And for centuries, girls and women from China were allowed to study at Abu Nur in Syria, but nowhere else. So if you were Syrian, Kurdish, Syrian, or Chinese, you were allowed. They had been there for centuries, since the school, you know, for as long as I remember. They had family members who had gone, aunts and uncles and things, who had gone to school there. But this would be the first year that that women from any other country was there, allowed to go. So there were a group of 5 of us, 4 out of Baltimore and 1 girl from California. And a few stayed longer. So that was the first 2 years we were there. And we were there with girls from Russia, Dagestan, Chechnya, or as you know, Shishan, Kurdish girls, Chinese, you know, girls from China. You know, Albania. It was a large group from Albania that were there, and some Bosnians. And this was right after the war in Bosnia. So a lot of the girls who were there from Bosnia had actually, their families ran into Albania. And so they had come with the Albanian girls. So the experience, it was, I hated it when I was there. I will say that. But it was a learning experience. They put us in rooms with other girls to make sure that didn't speak our language. So that to make sure that we would learn Arabic. So it was girls in my room. I think it was me and one other American girl, who's actually my best friend, some Chinese girls, some girls from Dagestan, a Kurdish girl, and a couple of Albanians. So because we all couldn't speak each other's language, we were forced to speak Arabic. So,
okay.
Yeah. Although the language of each room was different, because of course, everybody would pick up little words from each other. So you would have a mixture of Arabic plus a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of, you know, Russian. So it was an experience.
So did you have to complete any sort of like Arabic courses before you went? Did they require? Okay, so this was like fresh,
jump, sink or swim. Okay. It was sink or swim. And like I said, it was the first year of them opening up to girls from outside. So I was in high school when this happened. So the classes that we took math classes in Arabic. We took Sira, everything. All of our classes were in Arabic. And you jumped in and you just, you know.
I would have cried. I would have cried.
It was, I would say it was difficult in the beginning, but because everybody was new, you know, except for the Chinese girls. But the Chinese girls who were there, some of them had been there for at least 10 years. So some of them were in college that were in our dorm, going to the university. We were in what was called Tamhidi and things like that, like basically high school level Arabic. Well, actually, not even just Arabic classes, just high school level courses. And they started off with the Quran. We had to learn a certain amount of juz in a certain amount of time. The school was very strict. We couldn't wear makeup. We couldn't, you know, curl our hair, because they felt like everything that you do should be focused on studying. And so that was what it was. There were mandatory days where we would have to sit and do dhikr. There were after school, there were mandatory classes that we would have to go to inside of the dorm that were outside of school. So it was a tough course, but everybody helped each other.
Alhamdulillah. And you said that you went with 3 other girls from Baltimore?
3 other girls from Baltimore, yeah.
Okay. Were these girls, did they attend the same masjid as you? Did you know them?
Actually, one of them I've known since I was born, and yes, she attended my same masjid. The other, the other 2 attended Masjid Ar-Rahma. So the 3 of us were actually 4 of us were African American. 1 was mixed with white and Pakistani.
Okay.
So yeah, but the 4 of us, we were African American. Our parents converted, you know.
Now, when you got there, now I want to ask, I want to go back before you get to Syria. What was the conversation like with your parents and with your siblings about you leaving and then going to another country? And you were in high school at the time. We know about college students doing study abroad, and we know even about high school students who are living in like boarding schools. But for you to be in high school and to leave your family, to leave your country and be thrown in basically like you said, sink or swim. What was that conversation like with your parents and your siblings?
Well, with my parents, my mother did not want me to go. But that's because my mother and I are very close also. My father, on the other hand, he was all for it. If all of his children, my father has a saying like, we're soldiers, basically. And if he could get a whole bunch of, I guess, hafiz or scholars and alims, he would be the happiest man in the world. You know? My mother, on the other hand, is like, I want all my kids at home. You know, we'll just build an extra wing of the house and they can live in that extra wing as they grow up, and we'll just expand. You know? So the conversation wasn't that difficult. Also, my father's Mustafa Sharif. So for many people know him because he gives Hajj trips and Umrah trips every year. So that was always something that we discussed, like traveling and studying and things like that. So it wasn't a hard conversation at all. It was just something that I wanted to do. Okay. I would say what made me want to study is because you know how you grow up in the mansion and you hear women shouldn't do this, women shouldn't do that, and then you look up and you're like, that's not really true. That's what made me study. I was like, you know what? I'm studying, and when I come back, I'm going to be able to tell all of these brothers that this is not what Islam is supposed to be. Like, you know, and so that was my main reason of why I wanted to study. But like I said, the conversation was easy with my family. Going to Egypt, on the other hand, that was not as easy of a conversation.
Really? Okay, so how long did you study in Syria, and what made you want to go study in Egypt?
Syria, I studied there for what, two years in Syria. But when I came back, what was I doing when I came back? I was in college, basically. I went to Morgan for a couple of semesters, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to be here. I don't like America. And so my imam had been completing a course in Egypt at Azhar, an imam's course. And when he came back, he was like, Rasheedah, you know, the Egyptian government gives a scholarship to 10 Americans every year. Hardly nobody applies. And so, yeah, he said the embassy gives a scholarship to 10 students every year, American students, and a lot of people don't apply. And he was like, apply. And so I wanted to travel, and I was going to either join the army or I was going to go to Egypt. And so I did like everything to join the army because I was like, I just need to get the heck out of here. And I got the call on the same day for like to start boot camp or whatever, and the acceptance of Azhar, my acceptance into Azhar. And I was like, well, that's the easy choice, because I didn't really want to go to the army, you know.
You just wanted to travel.
I just wanted to travel. I was not really trying to fight in any wars. I wasn't trying to do any push-ups and pull-ups and jogging in mud. That was my childhood. I don't want to do, my father said he wanted soldiers, and he had us jogging through the streets of Baltimore in the snow. Seriously, like I have stories for days, but he wanted warriors. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to Egypt. So that was so when I was accepted into Egypt, I didn't know at the time that I was the only woman who had ever applied, and so when I got to Egypt, that's when they told me that I was the first woman to receive that scholarship. And I'm African American, so
So what would you say was your main focus when you were studying at Abu Nur in Syria, and what did you study, or what was your main study when you were at Al Azhar?
Honestly, my main study, both places, was basically just Islam and Islamic law. So in Syria, you didn't get that much of it. In Syria, what I would say what I appreciated about Syria, it gave you the more spiritual side of Islam that you don't see here. It gave you, we took a class on, I remember a sister came to the dorm and gave a lecture, and she basically was talking about red energy, green energy, yellow energy, and how there's a green energy that flows from the top of our head. And I'm like, she's talking about, as I thought back and came back home, she was talking about chakras, in Islam. And I'm like, I did not even, who would have even thought that was something that we had in Islam, and she took us on a guided meditation, basically, of doing tawaf around the Kaaba. It was so Syria was more, I would say, it gave me a better spiritual understanding of Islam, whereas Egypt, we focused on Islamic law, we focused on, XYZ. I didn't get the same vibe and the same type of courses in Egypt at Abu Nur as I got in Syria.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because sometimes for those of us who are on the outside looking in, when we think about people studying Islam, studying Quran, studying Arabic overseas, it's like, okay, it's like a one size fits all. And all of these different universities and all these different countries, they have their own way, like you say, of teaching. Like you say, you got the more spiritual side in Syria versus Egypt. Would you consider Egypt more just like more rigid, more just like this is what it is, Quran and Sunnah, but there's no spiritual side to it?
Well, I would say in the courses that I took, I did not get to because I stayed in Egypt for a few years, and the last year that I was in Egypt, I would have graduated to a different section where I may have gotten a better understanding. I feel like in Egypt, they wanted us to have the strength of the basics first, without bringing in all of the other types of fiqh, the other types of things that some people question, the theology of Islam, I guess. Is that a good?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So I think they wanted us to be on a certain level in Egypt before you graduated to the university level. And that's what I would have done had I stayed in Egypt. But my mom wanted me home. So
okay, I was gonna ask you, I said, what made you come back home? Yeah, only
let me tell you, I came home to visit, thinking that I was going to be going back. And they ain't buy my plane ticket. It was like, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm staying here. Unless I pay for my own ticket. And that
So
was
wait, you came home for a visit, which means that you still got stuff over there in Egypt.
Well, I did still have some things in Egypt, but they were with friends. So
okay,
the things that I did leave in Egypt, I did eventually get back. Yeah, but yeah, I was not planning on staying here in America. My plan was to go back, to Egypt and study, but we make plans and Allah makes plans. So that's life.
I wanted to ask you, what were some of the challenges, or maybe they weren't challenges, in terms of adapting to cultural norms in each country? Because it's normal if you live anywhere. It's just normal for you to pick up their style of dress, maybe pick up some of their cultural norms. What were some of the challenges, or maybe they weren't challenges? What were some of the things that you picked up that you brought back, or maybe subconsciously brought back with you?
I would say Syria was I'd say I was more homesick in Syria than I was in Egypt. Egypt is like living in New York, but in the desert. So,
okay.
And they Black.
Right.
They act like us, they act just like us. Syria was different. Syria has manners that you have to learn. They have an etiquette that you need to learn. They're not very loud in Syria. The men will hit on you no matter where you are. So that's something. And I wore niqab in Syria also, because being Black in Syria, I stood out more. They didn't see that a lot, especially Black women. The women, like, there was a whole section in Syria that was Somali, but I'm not Somali, so they, like, for me, walking around the part of Damascus that we lived in, and I think I was probably the darkest of the African-American sisters that went with us, so it was more of a, like, I got more attention, I would say. Zaid Shaker and his wife were in Syria the year that I was in Syria. Also, and so we interacted with them a lot. So that felt a little bit like home. But Syria was I felt very homesick. They didn't have, in Syria, they don't have a lot of, especially when I lived there, it was still illegal to have American money. So we had to exchange our money. We didn't have a way for our parents to send us money easily. So if somebody was flying over, they would send a care package with that person. The dorms were like nothing that I had ever lived in before. So, it was my first time outside of Hajj. It was my first time, living somewhere where there was a hole in the floor for the bathroom.
The notorious hole.
Yes, but in like, I made Hajj before I went to Syria. So in Saudi, the hole is porcelain. In Syria, where the dorm that I lived in, it was just a hole in the middle of some concrete. So that was new. Also living in a dorm with so many different women from different countries and different cultures, and they also had a different etiquette than I was used to. Just things that we think here are disgusting, they were happening over there on the daily,
The
and
hygiene practices are definitely different.
Hygiene was, I think Syria probably heightened my germophobia. It was definitely, it heightened my germophobia, but it also, I guess, opened my eyes to being, I guess, more understanding of things. But it was definitely rough in Syria. Syria gets cold also.
Right.
So they had winters, it snowed while we were there. Our dorms our dorms was an old Arab house with multiple rooms, but every room led to outside. So you had a furnace in your room, and if the wind blew, the furnace would blow up, and there was black soot all over everything. So you had to clean up. So Syria was difficult. Syria was hard. Egypt, that was easy. Also, Syria, you couldn't dress a certain way. They were used to women wearing, the women at Azhar, they wear dark blue or dark abayas, not even abayas, or overgarment that looks like a coat, and a white scarf. And
Right.
over top of their white scarf, they put, like, some of them, whoever, the ones that wear niqab, they'll bring a black scarf over top of the white scarf and pin it under their nose. Their niqab starts under their nose. So, so that was another thing. So me being African-American, I was getting white abayas. I was getting, nice, evergreen, burgundy. So that was even more attention drawn to me, I think I made myself a niqab, and I had beaded, I did some bead work on it.
You gotta glam it up,
I had to do something. So it's like, so those things, like, I got in trouble a lot because of my beadwork, because of things like that. So that was a culture shock. I think I cried a lot in Syria, but coming home and growing up a little bit, I appreciated the things that I learned in Egypt. In Syria, Lord. But in Egypt was a party. Egypt was fun. Egypt, we were, because I didn't have the rules that I had in Syria. Egypt,
Yeah, right.
I had I lived in the girls' dorm, and after that, I had a friend of mine. I met a British girl over there, Fatima Barakatullah. She was my roommate, and she's I had no idea she was so well known today. I'm like, my homegirl is on TV, and she's giving lectures around the world. But she was my roommate, and so we went and we found an apartment outside of the dorm, and we moved out. And so after we moved out of the dorm, it was, we had no rules. we we were living like regular people. And going to class. Even though the dorm in Cairo, my roommate was, and the first couple months of the living in the dorm was from Mali. A lot of the girls were from Chad, Mali, Senegal. Some girls were from Russia, and so it was more of, I got to learn a lot about African cultures that I hadn't been around them. In Syria, we were the only Black people, the Americans. So in Egypt, it was totally different. It was Africans from all over, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Senegal, Mali, Nigeria. So me coming in there, being the only African American, that was also different, Everybody was trying to be around the African American and the British girl. So,
really?
Yeah. So it was an experience, but I loved Egypt. Egypt is like home. So
I was going to ask you what made you come home, but now we know that you got tricked.
Yes, I was tricked.
So I wanted, because you talked a little bit about, what really prompted you to go to Syria, is that you wanted to be able to learn Islam, so that way you wouldn't get duped by, the brothers. And I'm sure that there are many sisters who are watching the live right now, or who will watch the recording, who understand that, because I think all of us have grown up or have had some experience with men, whether it was the imam or somebody else, manipulating Quran, manipulating Hadith, to get their way,
Right.
have their way with the women. So when you came back home, what was your first experience where it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to check this brother?
You know, I'm very mouthy, so I'm always I'm always the one. What was it? I think it was one day I was at the masjid and it was getting late. And I was out with like some of my friends growing up. We were at the masjid and we used to walk sometimes we would walk from the masjid to my house. And it was like it might have been a 7-block walk, but it was going on Maghrib. And I remember a brother came out and he was like, y'all sisters, y'all not supposed to be going anywhere outside of, it's almost Maghrib. Y'all not supposed to be out here. Go, and we were like, we're going home. Are you going to take us home?
Okay.
He didn't offer to take us home. So do you expect us to spend the night in the masjid? What do you want? And so I was saying, well, men and women aren't supposed to be outside after Maghrib. It's not
Thank you.
It's not just women. And I said, and it's 3 or more of us, and 3 or more equals mahram. And so we can walk home. Nobody, man or woman, is supposed to be out after Maghrib by themselves, because that's when they say the jinn come out, or as we say in America, the freaks come out at night.
Come out.
But in Islam it's the jinn. That was I think one of my first experiences. And it was always something to that effect. Oh, your father let you go to Egypt without him. He didn't stay. You weren't supposed to be traveling while yourself. First of all, my father flew with me to Egypt, even though he really didn't have to, but he flew with me to Egypt. He flew with me to Syria. He made sure that I was, he got my place to stay. He made sure every place that I stayed was a place that he deemed safe, and he visited very often. Between Umrah and the Hajj, he would visit. He would come and visit on his way there, on his way back. So like brothers would say little things like that, always. So
I believe. Now you said that because I got a question. Verse, how many years you studied in Syria? You said you were in Syria for 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how many years were you in Egypt?
Egypt, I was there for like 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were talking about, because you do get those things from brothers, even for sisters who study just like secular knowledge here in the United States, if they are going out of state, if they are living on campus. And we've seen that even in the group when we talk about letting your children go away to college. You have some brothers, not all the brothers, but some brothers and even some sisters who are like, why would you let your children do this? Why, aren't you scared about what's going to happen to them and trying to save their souls? And I've always come back to the fact that you have to fear Allah on your own. Right. Whether you're in a Muslim country or not, you have to fear Allah on your own. So what would you say to those sisters who are watching right now, who may be interested in studying overseas, or they may want their daughters or their nieces or their granddaughters to study overseas? What advice could you give them?
I would say things are different than today. I definitely believe that everybody should be able to travel. I think everybody should travel. I think everybody should live abroad for at least 2 years. 2 years, because the first year is always getting used to the city, and a lot of people, when they stay for 1 year, they're like, oh, I hated it. It was horrible. 2 years, you get used to it. That first year, you get used to it. The second year is when you start to actually appreciate the culture, I would say. But I'd say go. If you have an issue, do like my father did. Travel with them and make sure where they are is safe. But your child. If your child is trustworthy. If your child is wild. Because when I went to Egypt, I went with I went with a group of students, and some of the boys that went, they were wild. They got off the plane and they acted like they were back home. You know, so all of the things that they would have got in trouble for at home, they were doing in Egypt, you know. So you know your child. My daughter is in college right now and living on campus. And I trust my daughter. I think that I raised her in a way that she, you know, she fears Allah. I think that I raised her in a way that she she's responsible and she's not going to allow herself to get caught up. Now, things happen, and I've had conversations with her about things, you know, college and boys, you know. You have to have those real conversations with your children. That a lot of Muslims, I'll say a lot of Muslims, when I talk to them about how they talk to their children, a lot of them aren't very real with their children. They don't have real conversations. They might dance around things, or they beat in them how things are haram. But sometimes you have to just be 100% open with your children and have a real conversation and see, you know, and so they can understand why you feel the way you feel, and understand, and you can understand how they, you know, where their mindset is for real. So I've always had open conversations and open and transparency with my daughter. My mother had that type of relationship with me. So that's what I think works, especially if your child is going to school out of state or somewhere where you're not there to protect them all the time. You have to have some type of transparency so they can feel comfortable coming to you if they need something, or if something came up and they are scared it might be haram, but they should still be able to talk to you, and you can walk them through, you know, correcting maybe their mistakes, or, you know, overcoming the issue that they're going through.
I agree. I got a question from Mariam. Assalamu alaikum. She said, also, when you came back from Syria and went to Morgan State, all the credits from the Syrian school transfer?
No, those credits didn't transfer, but what happens is there's a thing called life experience credits that transfer, and they give you a certain amount of credits for things like that. So that's what I had. That's when they found out I went to Syria, it wasn't like I could give them my transcript, you know. So you know, I had documentation skills. They knew I traveled there. They knew I was accepted into the school. I got a letter from the imam. And so I had what was called life experience credits that moved over, that allowed me to, I guess, be further credit-wise at Morgan. Same thing with Egypt. So.
Okay. Thank you for that question, Mary. That was a good question. Now, I know you went on scholarship, but everybody isn't always so blessed. So what advice would you give to an aspiring sister who wants to go? She may have even been accepted, but the money is not, you know, it's not coming in.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for
your honesty.
I don't have an answer for that. I did go on scholarship, but even if I didn't, my parents would have still been able to provide for me. Like, they still sent me money. They still provided for me as their daughter over there. I also, when I was in Egypt, I got a job. So I wasn't supposed to get a job. Because when you have a student visa, you're not, especially with Abu Noor, they don't want you to have a job, because I was also getting a stipend from the school. I got a stipend from the school, and my parents were sending me money, and I got a job. So I got a job at an English language school teaching kindergarten. So I did that for a while in the school. They knew I was in school, but they were short staffed on English speaking teachers. So they kind of allowed me to work around things, especially my classes. So I don't know. Save your money. I would say look for a job over there. Look for a job over there, because they have, if you don't have to go to Azhar, you could go, Azhar you can go, and it's probably the cheapest option. for you. But they have schools or centers like the Fudger Center over there, which is excellent. Like I mentioned, my friend Fatima Barakatullah, she went to Azhar as well, and she took classes at the Fudger Center. And the Fudger Center, most of their teachers graduated from Azhar. So I would say look for classes, see if they have payment plans. It's not expensive to live in Egypt. It's not expensive to live in many of the Muslim countries outside of Dubai. It's not that expensive, so you can save your money. I lived, when we did move out of the dorm, I think our apartment, we had a 2-bedroom fully furnished apartment for like $300, and I have roommates, so it was cheap for me. So I don't know what the price is right now. I know it's more expensive, but it's not as expensive as here. So so say if you're a single mom and you have like child support and the father is allowing you to take the child to study over there abroad as well, you have that money coming in. You can probably live off of that. Or say if you have an online business, you could probably use that. An online business you can do from anywhere almost. Right. Or find a job that is an online position that allows you to work remote. You can do that. But like, honestly, that wasn't my reality. So it's not really, I don't know how good.
No, but you gave excellent alternatives though. I mean, especially you talking about online businesses, everybody does this now. But I think even for parents, I think they call these things like 529 plans. Y'all can correct me if I've heard of them. I ain't got no kids, but I've heard of them where, you put money away and it's supposed to be used for them to attend college or.
I have that for my daughter.
Right. So, I mean, if Muslim parents want to get creative, hey, start putting away money for your child. If, just in case he or she says, listen, I want to go study in Malaysia. I want to go study in Egypt. I want to go study in Senegal. I want to go study in Saudi, wherever, at least some of that money is there. And if they choose not to study Islam or Arabic overseas, then you could put it towards something else, but at least it's there. And I don't know how much you would put into it. That's up to the parent, but it's possible. It's possible, alhamdulillah.
That's true. I will say I did that for my daughter, and I every time I would get my refund check, I would put a portion of that into that account. Every check I would get, I would put a portion of that. And for her, like I told her, I said, if you don't want to go to college, you can use this to travel. You can use this for anything that you want to use it for. And alhamdulillah, she got a scholarship to school. Alhamdulillah, keep her in your dua that scholarship stays throughout. But I told her, I said, if you don't need it, you can keep this money. You can do whatever you want once you finish college. I don't want to touch it while you're in college, just in case something happens with the scholarship, and you lose it, and then you can't, you're stuck, But that's what I did for her. So That is definitely an option.
So Miriam says, so you was balling.
Balling? What? Is that Miriam Abdullah? She crazy. No, I wouldn't say I was balling. In Egypt, I felt like I was balling. I will say, because I had, like I said, I had my stipend from the school, I had money from my parents, and I had money from my job. So in Egypt, I did feel like I was balling. I was living the life. My friends went to American University. I was on that campus. I was at Azhar. I was, we were eating at Fridays on the Nile. I was balling. Yes, we would go horseback riding around the pyramids. And when I came back to America, I was like, this is whack. Like, I had more freedom in Egypt.
I definitely wanted to ask you about that because, well, before we get to that, I wanted to ask if somebody was interested, particularly a sister, of studying overseas, whether she wanted to just Islamic studies, Quran, what sort of preparatory coursework would you recommend for her to kind of have under her belt?
I don't know. I guess you could take, I would say, I don't know, because I would say do Arabic, but they speak, like, nobody speaks classical Arabic. Nobody speaks Fusha on the street. You learn, you speak that in class, but nobody speaks it on the street. So it's like you'll get classical Arabic. And so that's when I went to Egypt, I was, speaking classical Arabic in the taxi cab, and they were like, "Oh, your voice is so sweet. That's so cute. That's so cute. You said, well, bada dhalik instead of bada kida, which means, and after that." So it's like, Fatah bada dhalik, and bada dhalik, and she and they were like, "Ah, bada dhalik, just making fun of how I talk. And then, guys use it as ways to flirt with you. So I don't know. I would say, I can't say this coursework. I would say have an open mind. Okay. And that's something that most Americans don't do when they travel. They aren't very open. They don't understand that it's a totally different culture. They don't have the same, they don't have the same culture as us at all when it comes to almost anything. And your understanding of Islam is not their understanding of Islam. I would say here, there are strict people. There's a lot of strict Muslims in Egypt and in Syria, but they've been Muslim for generations, so the strictness that we have here is not there. There will, like in Egypt, the culture, they're Muslim, and it's a Muslim and Christian society. Majority Muslim, but there are a lot of Christians in Egypt, and they get along. They, they live in peace. It's not a whole bunch of fighting. Nobody talking about you kafir this, you kafir that, dealing with these kafirs, Nobody is doing that. They don't want their daughters to marry.
Our people are so extra,
But that's the thing. In Egypt, they are extra. That's why I said they Black. They just like us. They are very extra. Like, I saw women beating men up on the street in Cairo. I saw a woman pull a man out of the bus and beat him up because he touched her. That is one thing that you have to worry about in any Muslim country. Men will touch you. Like if you're on a bus, the big mega bus, don't get on the bus. If they have an option for an all women's car on the train, because Cairo has a subway, get on the all women's train or a train that's not that crowded, because if it's a crowded bus or a crowded train, a man will use that opportunity to fill you up. Just like if you get on a crowded train up here, some nasty old man gonna, try to fill you up. But those are the things that you have to watch out for when you're over there as a woman alone. You have to watch out for that. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else I would say. As Muslims, I tell non-Muslims when they go not to wear shorts, not to wear tank tops, because that's not what they're used to seeing over there, even though they have non-Muslim women who will wear short skirts, but they still have a certain amount of modesty than a lot of the women that we have here. So some things are tolerated, and a lot of things will just make them think that you're loose, and the men will treat you like that.
Now, I wanted to ask you about Syria, because we all know, the war in Syria, and pretty much like the country just being destroyed by its own leader. Watching that unfold on television and in the news here, because it was reported heavily here in the United States, how did that make you feel, being someone who used to live there, used to study there, and now seeing it all just like come to like just rubble?
It was sad. I would say I also had friends who were still in Syria. I have friends whose families are, Syrian families are still there. So it was sad and it was hard. And I would talk to them and they would, they would tell me their story. Like a friend of mine who lives in Dubai now, she basically ran from Egypt. Her family, some of her family ran and moved to Dubai, fighting, to get away from the war. It was sad, especially seeing areas that I had been to, areas that I had walked to, areas that I frequented, that were basically that looked nothing like. There was a park, and it had trees that were thousands of years old, and I used to go there, and all of those trees are gone. Like Syria has so much history, and a lot, like there is Bushra, where the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was with his uncle, and they were walking, and his uncle noticed, the hadith where it says the cloud was covering the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he was walking. That's Bushra. That's Syria, and I've been there, and it's like, to just like these areas that all of the prophets, many of the prophets, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Yahya, all of them, they were in these areas, and those areas are gone, basically. Those historic monuments that stood for all of us, in different various religions, those are gone. So it's sad. It's sad to think of, but I will say, it's not just the government of Syria that's doing that to the people. It would be what is the word that I'm trying? It's not. It's more to it than that. Syria is one of the only countries, and Muslim countries, that didn't allow the Western influence in their country. So after Hafiz Assad had passed and his son became the leader, of course, that the nation was targeted. They couldn't get past Hafiz Assad. He was a strong leader. He had been there for a while. Even though he was a dictator, and he did a lot of wrong. But the country didn't have any Western influence. There was no McDonald's, there was no Western Union, there was none of that. So everything that they had was theirs. And to have that much history that belongs to everybody, people want that. People want those things. People want their, I don't even know how to explain it. That's the land that they have been trying to get to for a while. And so when you look at the destruction of many countries, you look at Libya, you look at Iraq, you look at, Syria, it's all basically the same. The leader becomes the enemy.
Right.
In our news. And the leader is doing this and the leader is doing that. Not to say that those leaders, are wrong, but sometimes we have to question, is what we're hearing in the news 100% correct?
Right.
Are we hearing truth? Is it the full truth? Are we being played, by our own media? It's right now there is a strong movement to have Muslims and Muslims countries, look like terrorists. And sometimes we have to question some of the things that we see. In Syria, I didn't see any of the things that people said was happening. Of course, I wasn't around people, but they was, people say, oh, people disappear. People are disappearing here.
Right. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's something that is happening in all countries. And it's not questioned here, but it's a horrible thing when it happens over there.
So now that you're back, and how long have you been back from Egypt?
A long time, girl. A long time. My daughter is 18 and in college. So
I think the first time I ran into you was, oh goodness, this was the first day one that your sister Naeemah did.
Yeah, I did meet you there. My memory is not so great when it comes to. I do remember.
January 1st, 2011.
Yes, so it was. Yes, it was. 1-1-1-1. Day
well,
one.
Yeah, it sure was. And I remember she got up there, and she and Tahir from Crescent Moon Nights, and they were thanking everybody, and Naeemah had called all of her siblings up. And I remember you had on like this beautiful like African ensemble, and I was like, I didn't know her. Like I met Sadiqa before, and I knew Ayana. I can't remember how I met Ayana, but I was like, oh, she's really pretty, and I was like, but I've never seen her before. Was that so from 2011? Were you home before then, or had you just come home?
No, I've only been home for a couple. I lived in Syria. I mean, in Egypt.
You gotta Egypt. You was in Egypt.
I lived in Charlotte at that time. And yeah, that outfit was made by a wonderful tailor, Amadou Fashions in Charlotte. He is amazing. He actually makes most of my clothes for Eid and various events. It was made from a sari, out of a sari. Yeah, I lived in Charlotte at that time. So I was just coming to visit. I moved to Charlotte in, I think, 2007.
Okay.
So 2011, yeah, I was still living in Charlotte, coming up and visiting for all of Naeemah's events, and for the women's conference. And now, even though I didn't go to one session, I would just, hang in the hallways and get my henna done. But yeah, no, I do remember you there. I remember you there, and a couple other sisters that I saw that you would see online. Naeemah's event was, mashallah, it was really nice.
And Naeemah, I don't know if she's watching this, but I'll be looking at the calendar.
She's at an event right now. She's working an event right now. A fall celebration for a Black-owned farm here in the city. So they asked her if she could do their event, I guess, be the planner for that event. So she's doing that right now, her and Sadiqa.
If you have never been to any of Naeemah's events, specifically day one, they don't have it every year because it falls on a different day. Usually they have it when January 1st falls on like a Sunday or a Saturday night or a Sunday night. But if you've never been, inshallah, if she and Tahir do this later on, y'all gotta go, because it's everything. It's just everything. Now I have to ask you before we get out of here, because as Americans, I've noticed that we love like our students of knowledge. We love people who go overseas and come back, but it's usually the men that we put up on that pedestal, and we'll go to them for their knowledge. We want them to teach, whether it's in a weekend madrasa or adult madrasa. Did your community, wherever you settle, did they reach out to you and say, hey, you have the knowledge, we want you to teach?
They did.
Okay.
They did. And I taught Arabic class for a little while, and I realized teaching is not for me.
Okay.
I don't have the patience for it. Especially, I would say I don't have the patience for it because I also don't have the patience to be challenged by a certain men in the community. And I know there was one imam here he's from North Carolina, who his name will remain unnamed, but he had said some things basically about me, and then saying, and when the imam stepped to him and questioned him, his response was he didn't have to apologize to me for slander or anything, because I was a student of knowledge, and you can basically backbite against students of knowledge. And I was like, I'm not a student of knowledge. I don't consider myself a student of knowledge. I don't consider myself a scholar at all. I studied for myself. You know, I didn't study to come back. And not to say that I would not have. I probably would have if I didn't have a bad experience when I first came back teaching Arabic or things like that. But I also didn't feel that I was qualified at that. I will say today, I don't feel like that I'm qualified. There are people that are much more qualified than me that are Muslim women, like Intisar Arab, you know, there are a lot of sisters, my friend Fatima Barakatullah, who is in London. There are a lot of Muslim women who are making it, but they are still challenged, sadly, you know. Muslim, the idea of women being scholars or women being teachers, it's not as respected as you would hope it to be, or as it should be. You know, you had women who, one of the oldest colleges in the world was built by a woman.
Woman, yep.
You know, Aisha radiallahu anha was one of the, you know, she gave most of the hadith. You know, but today we live in a society that doesn't respect women, and they don't respect women with knowledge. We can be in, you can be, and I've seen it in some of the groups where Muslim men don't know the person that they're speaking to, and I'll see them saying stuff to sisters that I know have studied more than me. And they'll tell them, oh, you need to study your Islam, because the sister is basically telling them, oh, no, this is wrong. What you're saying, you need to, you know, this is incorrect. What you're saying, such and such and such. And they'll say, oh, sister, you need to study, or where's your husband, sister? That's why you're not married. And I'm thinking, I don't even know. This sister knows, like, if she doesn't know all of the Quran, she knows most of it. He doesn't know that this sister can recite like hadiths from Bukhari and hadiths from books that he hasn't even heard of, you know. But her knowledge is not respected because she's a woman, you know, and because he has not heard of it, or some man did not tell him, you know. So women, we have a long way to go. I would say African Americans in America, as African American Muslims in America, I'll say are very important to Islam, especially Islam that has not been tainted by culture and things like that. We are, I would say African Americans in America, as well as the converts or reverts in Europe, you know, it's like a revitalization of true Islam that has not been tainted. But when it comes to women in Islam, we're still plagued by misogyny. And that's probably because of the culture that we live in, where European misogynistic values we've been conditioned to think that that is the norm, when like respect for women in traditional African cultures, respect for women and knowledge in Islam and traditional Arab cultures and things like that, Asian cultures, is at a higher level than it is in European culture. And we live in America, and that's what our men and our women are conditioned to think is normal. And sadly, it puts us behind, and it's a disservice to us, when it comes to the growth of women in Islam and the growth of women, period.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but I was going to ask you, like, you know, the challenges of especially Black women, because when we think of students of knowledge in the African American community, we automatically think men. We automatically think of, you know, I'm not going to name names, but we automatically think of men. And most of those men who have studied that we know, who are very like well known, not only are they just men, but they're also converts. So it's like when you see women who are Black women born and raised in Islam, and they don't fit the stereotypical bill of what a student of knowledge or someone who has studied overseas looks like. You know, because we have it in our minds that if she's a woman and she's in all black, she's in the niqab, she's in gloves, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want nobody coming for me, but we know the stereotype. You know, she isn't outspoken. She probably not even on Facebook or any social media because she's so modest and so pious. And it's like, no, that's our stereotype about people. So when you was running down like your resume, I was like, hold up. Wait a minute. I was like, she's been in our midst since the beginning of BAMBAR. And I didn't know. I had no clue. What can we do, not just for the sisters, but just African Americans in general? What can we do? Whether it's money, whether it's a change in our attitudes, what can we do to support those sisters who have come back or who want to go overseas and study Islam? And if they choose to come back to the United States, how can we best support them?
I would say start asking what they want to do, if they want that role, you know, period. Some sisters may not. I will say for me, I'm one of those people, you know what, that's not true. I did want to start a school. I still want to, for women, for girls. That is like my ultimate goal. It has not come to fruition yet.
Well, you got to tell you, because listen, BAMBAR is a springboard. We'll help you. We'll put y'all on. It's a lot of motivated
I'm saying ask them what they, you know, when they come back or while they're there, you know, just reach out to them if what they need, talk to them, see if, you know, if they want to, what they want, where they want to be when they come back. And if it's something that you can help them with, help them. You know, I'll say, and that's with anything, not just, you know, women who are studying abroad. That's how my daughter basically got to where she is and at school now. You know, people asked her, what's your goal? What do you want to do? And those people helped her. She said she wanted to be a veterinarian. They told her about internships at Johns Hopkins, things like that. So, you know, just period. Find out what they want their role to be, what their goals are with the knowledge that they're seeking, with the reason, find out the reason why they're actually, you know, studying. I guess that's all I could say.
Now, I know that you may not want to get too deep, but I want to know more about this school you want to start, because I would love to support in any way I can.
It's something that I've actually talked about it with a few of my friends who are teachers, some are principals. I've always wanted to have like a girl, because you always see things focusing on boys when it comes to leadership, when it comes to Islam, period. And so I wanted to have a school that was focused on girls. I did want it to be like a boarding type of school where it focused on women, leadership, Arabic, Quranic studies, theater, things like that, and Sharia. So, and to produce basically women who understand Islam, to produce more women scholars and more women business women and just stronger women in general. It needs to be done for boys and girls, but I've always wanted to do it for girls. I talked to a friend of mine in Senegal about starting it in Senegal, because a lot of times, like if you don't have money in a lot of these Muslim countries, those girls don't go to school. Like I was talking, a friend of mine, he's from Senegal, his wife, ex-wife now, and when I was talking to her, she didn't speak English. He spoke English extremely well. And I said, well, you know, how come she doesn't speak French? She doesn't speak English. She only speaks Wolof. You know, why is it that everybody speaks French? Like in your family, everybody speaks French but her. And he was like, because her family was they didn't believe that she was a girl. She didn't have to go to school. So she didn't learn French. Like the little bit of French that she speaks is just to get around certain places. But in most Senegalese people know Wolof and French. You know, those are the two languages they knew, but she only knew Wolof, you know. And because they didn't feel that she was a girl, they didn't feel that it was important for her to be educated. She didn't go to school. She got maybe elementary, middle school, but that was it. And so when you have like, I would talk to my friends like over there, and when you talk to them and you hear about like some of the issues that the women are going through, and even here, it just made me want to, I was like, well, we should just open a English, Arabic language school, focusing on leadership. And I've talked about it to a few people, but it just hasn't come to fruition. I really don't even know where to start from it. It's an idea that is in my head that I would love for it to happen, but I don't even know where to start.
We will continue to make dua for you, because I would love to support something like that. And I'm a product of an all-girl high school, so I know what single-sex education can do for you. Teaching you how to be a leader, especially in areas where you thought that was just specifically for boys. So I know the power of an all-girls education. So I want to thank you again, Rasheedah. Thank you so much for coming on. When I reached out to you, and whenever I reach out to anybody to come on Sunday Stories, I'm really just crossing my fingers, because I don't know. I don't know. Some people don't like coming on camera. Some people don't like, talking about their experiences, whether it's from childhood or adulthood or whatever the case is. But like, you were like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I was like, oh, okay. So, and Sakina, we know that you were having issues with the internet over there in Nigeria. Inshallah, we're going to do a part 2 with you as well. And for those of you who are watching, this is, like I said, a prelude to a new project that BAMBAR will be starting in 2022. Inshallah, we will be talking to as many members as we can in the group who have lived overseas, study overseas, whether this is a Muslim majority country or not, just basically your experiences living outside of the United States. Again, this is a group where we're trying to get to know one another. There's always new members coming in. And when we find out more about one another, we can empathize with each other. We can sympathize with each other. We can support their projects, support their businesses. And so I just want to thank you again. Again, Sunday Stories is every other week. I know when I was doing season 1, I was doing it every week. That burnt me out. So I'm doing it every other Sunday. And 2 Sundays from now, which will be the 14th, November 14th, we have Brother Kyrie Al-Amin, who is the son of Imam Jamil Al-Amin. He will be joining us to talk about his father's legacy. And we ask everyone to keep him and his father in dua. And again, thank you so much, Rasheedah. If there's any more questions, I tried to go through as many questions as I could while, I'm trying to get my attention.
This is Mook. I think I had a question real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
What subjects did you have any ijazahs in, if you have any? What topics or subjects?
Say that again.
What topics or subjects do you have ijazah in?
She said, be your own people.
Or did you? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking. What was your specialty? What did you study? Like,
my specialty there in Syria, there was no specialty.
Okay.
In Egypt, my specialty was basically, honestly, I would make sure I was in every class that was related to Islamic law as it went for women.
Okay.
As it applied to women. I would even, sometimes they would have, and that was just my own thing. So both courses, there was no specific ijazah that I was like, there was no, what's the word? There was no real thing no set course of study. We were basically, like I say, it was basically learning everything that you could before you went to that second step. And in Egypt, that second step would have been me going to the University of Azhar that I did not get to because my parents did not let me go. Now, if I had, it probably would have been Islamic law. But while I was there, I would take, like, a lot of times some of the teachers and some of the sheikhs would have courses at Azhar that you could sit in. And so I would do that a lot. When I actually met Sheikh, I met Sheikh Al-Azhar, and I met Ahmed Gashado, who was the Grand Sheikh Mufti in Syria. So I was able to sit with them and talk to them a lot, ask them a lot of questions, being the first woman gets you a lot of a lot of places.
I'm not mad, girl. Use it.
Although meeting Sheikh Al-Azhar, that was based on because of my father. We went in to try to meet him and on a whim. And I was told, my friend Fatima, I said, let's use your father's name because he is the Grand Mufti in London. And so we go in there, we're like, we would like to meet Sheikh Al-Azhar. Us three girls, it was my friend from London, me, and my friend from Thailand. We go in there, we're like, we would like to meet him. And they were like, who are you? And we were like, well, this is, Fatima Barakatullah, Mufti Barakatullah's daughter. And they were like, who is he? Like, and then they said, and I said, and I'm Rasheedah Sharif, and he said, Rasheedah Sharif, Mustafa Sharif's daughter? And I said, yes. And so he goes and he was like, come in, he loves your father. And I'm like, what the freaking heck? Like, how is this possible? But apparently my father, when he came there to drop me off, made friends with everybody. So it allowed me to be able to sit with him and basically just talk to him and ask all the questions that I wanted to ask. So.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. One more question. What were the requirements for you entering like the school in Egypt? Were there any requirements that you had to?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just filled out the application. I had to be Muslim.
Okay.
Of course. My parents were Muslim, so it was like, honestly, they interviewed me. My imam gave me a recommendation, Imam Daryl Wainwright, Allah Yarhamahu, and that was it. They called me on the telephone. I got my visa, and they just told me I was accepted. It wasn't any hoops to jump over. I don't know if that scholarship is still available. You can contact the Egyptian embassy because that's who I went through. Okay. They might still do it, but when I did it, it was 10 American students that they gave the scholarship to every year.
MashaAllah. Wow. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Wow, this was so inspiring. I love this.
Yeah, because she's about to go into the military.
Right.
Can you even imagine? I can't even imagine. Like, I am not that person. If I don't think I would have made it through the pull-ups, the pull myself up, I can't do that.
Girl, if you can make it through Hajj, you might be able to do some things in boot camp.
Hajj is very difficult. I will say that. Hajj is a totally different test. But some man yelling in my face.
Yeah, that's true.
For some pull-ups. Ciao, boo. No. But
I really hope that this was inspiring. And I want to give a shout out to, I think it was we all know him as Ashir Adrian Kirk in our group. We know him from Measured Tones. He had done a series, either he or Manna had done a series, and they were talking to women who had memorized the Quran. So these was Hafi of Quran. And so when I had come up with this idea, and it had gone from talking to the group of students from Imam W.D. Muhammad who studied in Syria, and then it went to just focusing on the women, I had that in mind because I remember watching the video and there were sisters in the comment section saying, this is so inspiring. People who look like us, people who come from the same, big cities, mid-sized cities who are like us. And they're studying whatever it is their course of study is, and they're getting closer to Allah and they're bringing that knowledge back here. So for those of you who are watching, I hope this was inspiring to you. I thank you, Rasheedah, for always keeping it real.
That's right.
Can I say one thing? It's funny that like the Wafdi Muhammad group that went there, they went some years after me. I want to say maybe
Right.
4 or 5 years after me, but I was actually there the year Imam Muhammad came to the school.
Oh, okay.
To speak with the sheikh, and they bought the American girls up for the dinner. it was nice. So it was like, I don't know. I wonder how when I talk to them, their experience was different than mine.
Okay.
Some of them lived on campus, some of them didn't, but a lot of the things that were mandatory for us to do, I guess because we were the first ones, wasn't mandatory for them. Like a lot of them didn't sit for the dhikr. Like I asked one of them, because in Syria at Masjid Abu Nur, like before Jummah, like there's a choir. They sing the sheets and play the daf, while you wait for the imam to come. And so I remember asking, don't you, there was a choir. I missed that. And they were like, I don't remember that. So a lot of the things they didn't do, they didn't have the same experience. So I'm interested to see even though my sister went, she had a different experience than some of them, also because she lived in the dorm and some of them lived off campus.
Okay.
So I've even talked to her, a lot of her, they didn't have the same experience as me. And it's kind of sad because the experience that I had was like, it was nice. Those things, certain things was really nice and some things was really horrible. But you might want to talk to them. They had a totally different experience.
Now, which sister was this?
Sadiqa.
So this was, I didn't know Sadiqa.
Sadiqa went with the group from Imam Wafdi Muhammad.
Okay. All right.
So.
I know Sadiqa. I met Sadiqa. Oh, this was so many years ago, but I do remember Baltimore Magazine had done, I want to say it was a cover story on the Gwen Oak community. And your sister Sadiqa and Zaina Abdul Adil, when you opened up to the
I remember that.
They were on there.
Them.
Yep, I saw them. And I didn't know either one of them at the same time, but I met them later on through probably the women's conference or something like that. But yeah, I didn't know Sadiqa was that she had gone with that cohort. She did.
She went with them. So like I said, her experience was totally different than mine. I guess they became a little bit more relaxed. But yeah, she did go with them, but I think she had a better experience than I did. Also they had a whole new girls dorm, so
did they still have that hole in the floor? Did she say
probably, but I don't know. It was probably had some porcelain around it instead of the cold concrete that we had. It was nasty.
If you are watching this or you know somebody who had gone to study in Syria under Imam W.D. Muhammad's cohort, please, and if you feel comfortable, because I don't believe in pushing anybody to do anything, if you feel comfortable being a part of that lineup that we're going to have in 2022, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mukhtar, or you can email us at bambornandraised@gmail.com. And if you are someone who just is interested in being a part of the lineup that we have when we're talking to people who have studied or lived overseas, again, Muslim country, non-Muslim country, you can feel free to reach out to us or email us again at bambornandraised, all one word, @gmail.com. So it is 2:30. Thank you so much for rocking out with us. And inshallah, I will see you all in 2 weeks when we talk to Kyrie El Amin. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.